I was born into a pretty affluent family, but one where Victoriana ruled. And so there was very little tolerance or even understanding of emotionality. Coupled to that, I was physically abused by my first nanny from the age of 0 to 4. I was then sent away to a classic British boarding school aged 8, where I was ritualistically bullied. I use the word tortured because if I actually described what was done to me, you'd probably agree it was closer to torture than bullying, for about 3 years by the elder boys and sometimes by masters. So that set the stage for my life 53 years ago and left me with a very, very blinkered and frightened view of the world. I'll come back to that, but it's important to set that stage. I then learned into my teenage years that a wonderful thing called sex could actually make me feel better. So, and I have no trouble with what you want to call it, whether you want to call it compulsive sexual behavior, acting out behaviors, sex addiction, doesn't bother me. At the end of the day, I struggled because I learned at the age of 11 that if I masturbated, I could make the pain go away. So unfortunately, as some of you I'm sure will understand, if you're medical students, you will know what neurons are. And there's an old saying in the addiction industry that neurons that fire together get wired together. And some neurons that were triggering when I received pain got very tragically interwoven and linked to neurons that gave me pleasure. The pleasure I was giving to myself. It started with myself, with masturbation. And of course, as I grew into my teenage years, it exploded once I discovered girls and boys and you name it. Tragically, I am not ashamed to say there's not much I haven't done in my desperation to make myself feel better over many, many years, decades. That came to a head when one extraordinarily brave girlfriend on the 14th of June, 2004, confronted me. She was the first girlfriend that had ever confronted me with love, with gentleness, with kindness, without screaming at me, telling me what a monster I was. And that, for some reason, caught my attention. And that was the day that changed my life, bless her. Because she, with a lot of help at the time, persuaded me, and I realized I had a major problem. I almost committed suicide in front of a truck on the night of the 7th of July. And the very next day, I checked into a treatment center. And there started my journey of recovery from addiction and depression and whatever else you want to call all the crap that I've explored to try and keep my pain suppressed. And the pain I could describe basically as fear. Fear of life, fear that I was going to be hurt, fear that if I got too close to someone, that they would only hurt me again. Because having been quite badly hurt across a large spectrum, from physical to emotional to spiritual, even religious, through the first, so let's say 15 years of my life, I was pretty scared of the world. So I set about my adult life, making damn sure I did not get hurt again. And tragically, that's what led me into a lot of pain. When I thought I was actually solving my problems, I was actually making them worse. My idea of solving problems was to continue to explore the underbelly of London's sex scene for decades, thinking that the next woman would save me, the next fix would save me, getting high on planning craziness, journeys into crazy parties, doing the kind of things that some people might think would make a good sexually fantasized movie. As far as I'm concerned, it was my idea of living hell. That all led to a girlfriend who I got together with in 2013, tried to have a relationship with. Turned out that she was a very, very smart lady. And she knew all about the struggles of addiction and oppression and being bullied and stuff that had happened in her early life. And she called me on my behaviors many, many times. I continued to act out behind her back and finally got caught again. So despite the fact that I was seeing a therapist, despite the fact that I was in 12-step recovery, I was regularly attending a thing called Sex Addicts Anonymous, which is very similar to Alcoholics Anonymous, just for sex addicts rather than people that use alcohol. Despite all that, I was still acting out. And she finally busted me right before my 50th birthday, which was not a good thing. I was quite looking forward to a 50th birthday party. Well, that kind of went out the window. She got on a plane and left England. And I was left thinking, wow, I've been in 12-step recovery. since 2004. And I've now royally screwed up another very special relationship. This is a relationship whereby I'd gotten to a point where I actually wanted to marry her. She left, and I was left through August and September that year thinking, what the hell do I do now? And I'd met an amazing man called Dr. Gabor Mate through, I won't bore you with how, but I had met him and got to know him a little bit. So I called him because at one of the conferences I'd attended of his in Toronto in 2016, he talked about this thing called ayahuasca. And it piqued my curiosity. I thought, that's interesting. You go to the jungle and you drink this stuff and you get better. Well, that's kind of what I was left thinking. And I thought, well, it sounds so off the beaten track, maybe it's worth a go. So I rang Gabor, and he was very gracious. He gave me an hour of his very precious time. And I explained what had happened. I was very honest with him. I told him exactly what I'd been doing and how I betrayed that girlfriend and how I'd betrayed every girlfriend I'd ever tried to have. And I said, what do you think? Do you think I should go to Peru? And he said, Mark, if you've got the time and the money, just go. Don't question it, just go and see what happens. What have you got to lose after all? So I said, okay, fine. Where do I go? He says, well, I support a place called the Temple of the Way of Light. So I Googled Temple of the Way of Light, and you're welcome to do it. They have a wonderfully comprehensive website. And I read this website. It took me a while because it's got a lot on it. And by the end of it, I thought, you know what? I'm going to go. So on his recommendation, I booked my plane ticket to Peru. I flew into Lima, and on the 2nd of November, 2017, I walked into the jungle with 23 other people to this amazing camp. It's out of Iquitos, which is northeast Peru, right up in the Amazon, so top of the Amazon. And there began a 3-week journey that changed my life. I remember arriving and feeling incredibly uncomfortable. I mean, we're talking about having left my cozy air-conditioned hotel to getting to a brush and sort of bamboo and reed hut. It did have a bed. It did have a mosquito net, thank God. But I certainly was now way out of my comfort zone. And you've got to remember something else. You could call me lucky from one perspective. I've never dabbled in drugs. I've never taken a non-medicinal drug in my life. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I've never smoked. I've never gambled. So my only notable addiction was sex. However, the jungle has revealed other truths. And I can today tell you that actually my first addiction was anger or rage. Come back to that. So there I was in the jungle thinking, wow, my therapist didn't want me to come. My traditional therapist in October 2017 said, what, Mark, why would you fly to the jungle to take drugs, having never taken drugs? And I looked at her and I said, you know what, Barbara, I don't actually see it as taking drugs. I see it as flying to a very special place to work with shaman, which is what I believe is I'm going to do. Gabor is supportive of this. I don't think he put his name to it if it wasn't legitimate. So actually, I disagree with you. So that therapist and I parted company because she so disagreed with what I was about to do. I think it actually threatened her rather traditional methods. So I got on that plane and I got there. And I'm going to tell you a couple of stories from the jungle now, because I think it'll set the tone as to why it left such an indelible mark in my life. There we were. My girlfriend had to actually persuade me on those first couple, that Thursday afternoon and that Friday morning. I was actually getting quite frightened because obviously I have never taken drugs. I now am aware I'm about to drink this potion, which purportedly gives you hallucinations. So I was getting a bit worried and a bit frightened, thinking, I'd heard stories of people that might have unfortunately taken 1E tablets and had a bad reaction and died. And I thought, Christ, I'm 5,000 miles from home in the steaming jungle, and I'm about to drink this revolting goo. What's it going to do to me? Anyway, I thought, well, I've come all this way. The place has been going for 10 years. Hell, let's give it a go. That very first night, which was Saturday, the 4th of November 2017, I lay down in a circle in this amazing hut with the shaman in the middle. The only light in the room was a candle, which the shaman used to mix their brew. And then you kneel down and you drink a very small amount. It's probably a small shot glass full, not even full. And it tastes revolting. At least 50% of the people throw up within 5 minutes of drinking it. I luckily didn't throw up. It didn't trigger that. With me, it triggered compulsive yawning on a scale which almost dislocated my jaw. And that I attribute today to the negative energy that was trying to get out of me. Negative energy that had been cooped up, bottled down, bottled away inside my soul for what was then 50 years. When it finally started to react, I had a very, very extraordinary experience. And I'm going to jump now to the following morning when I was sitting back in my hut, because my girlfriend did this with me, by the way. Interesting part of the story, I won't go there today, but she was with me on this journey. We sat down in my hut and she said, would you like me to describe what I saw? And I said, I'd be fascinated if you want to share it with me, because don't forget, ayahuasca, unlike alcohol, if you don't know this, it actually leaves you able to see exactly what happened. Alcohol does the opposite. You can't remember a thing, and some people think that's a good thing. Ayahuasca, you remember everything that happened through the night. So she starts describing what she saw or experienced, or what do you call it, a vision, call it a hallucination, doesn't matter. She described how she saw me in an old iron frame bed, aged 8. She said, she described this with crazy clarity. She saw me standing there, cowering under my blanket, screaming, stop it, help, stop it. And she saw a handful of boys standing around my bed, and they had long football socks and bars of soap, hard soap in the end of the football socks, and they were clubbing me, beating me. And she described this as if she was watching a movie. And as she was describing it, I sat there with my chin clearly getting longer and longer and longer on my hut bed. And she finally said, why are you looking at me so strangely? And I said, well, I better tell you what I saw last night. And as I unfolded what I saw, our stories were identical. I mean, identical to the color of the blankets, to the screams. And the reason that might surprise you is because I had never told a living soul that story because I hadn't remembered it. I can remember some of the things that were done to me at school, but I'd never remembered that detail. It came back to me, and I now do recall it. And how could she possibly have known that? Well, the wonders of the jungle, the wonders of the energy that those shaman create and swirl and help you express and look into. We're all energy. We're all electrical energy after all. And what they're doing is they have a capacity. Don't even begin to ask me how. But they can channel energy, and they can help you face whatever you haven't faced or don't want to face or are too frightened to face. I drank ayahuasca 7 times over 3 weeks in 7 separate ceremonies. Every third night we drank. And the third night I asked, you set an intention before you drink at the beginning of this particular ceremonial evening. And you set an intention. And on the third night, having been so shocked by the crazy reality that was shown to my girlfriend and I on that first night, I asked Mother Ayahuasca, which is what you refer to the jungle as when you're doing this. I said to Mother Ayahuasca, I would like you to show me the pain I cannot remember receiving. And boy, did I get what I asked for. And that night, for the first time in what was then 50 years, I saw my nanny physically beating me very badly, many, many times. And they had to calm me down through that night because I was thrashing around the floor of the jungle with such aggression that I was virtually tearing myself to pieces, literally. I would demonstrate it if I was on a stage, but you try and imagine that. Every muscle in your body firing simultaneously, and you can't control it. And that again, I attest today, I suggest to you, that is 50 years of terror, of suppressed energy, suppressed by addiction, flooding out of me. The ayahuasca opened my soul. It opened my implicit memories. It gave me access to things that were definitely stored away in my body. If you've ever heard of a book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, I strongly recommend it. That'll explain, as he does better than anybody else, how the body remembers things that may have been done to it, but because it's stuck in your implicit neurons, but you can't have it, you have no access to it. Well, that is the beauty of ayahuasca. It gave me access to parts of my life that I had no way of recalling. I was too young. That is what I could talk for days on what happened to me in that jungle. I journaled every day. I could write a book about it. But I hope that gives you a snippet of a little insight into why my 3 weeks in the Amazon jungle changed my life. Ayahuasca tapped into things that 14 years of therapy hadn't come close to. I didn't even know I was abused and beaten so badly by my first nanny. I'm utterly convinced my parents didn't know either. When I told this story to one of my cousins at the beginning of 2018, she, in horror, turned to me and said, I can't believe you don't remember this. And I went, what, you do? She went, I remember watching Nanny Berwick beat you. Every time I came to stay with you, I was terrified of her. A second cousin also attested to the violence that she witnessed only a year ago. So I have living witnesses who can confirm that what I saw, dreamt, hallucinated, vision, whatever you want to call it, in the jungle is absolutely true. What has that done to my life? Well, as you can probably imagine, 14 or 15 years of therapy that didn't even know that that had happened to me because I didn't know it had happened to me. Never touched aside. What was going on through the first 50 years of my life? I was unwittingly living as a woman hater. I was terrified of women because the first person to abuse me was a craggedy old woman. And I learned inside to hate them and fear them. So is it any wonder I've destroyed every single relationship I've ever tried to have? No, is the answer. It's not a coincidence at all. Is it a coincidence I'm not married? Tragically not. I'm happy today, but I'm single, interestingly. And I'm not using this as a dating app, by the way. But it's been a fascinating journey. What using plant medicine has done for me, it has revealed the truth of my life. It has revealed the truth that purportedly modern psychiatry and therapy couldn't even get close to. I don't blame anyone that tried to help me between 2004 and 2017. I don't blame anybody. They weren't ayahuasca. So do I support the use of psychedelics? And in my experience, ayahuasca, absolutely. Do I think it can change lives? I know it can. Today, I help people for a living. I'm an addiction recovery coach, and I work with men, and I help them uncover the things that I can now sniff out, like a rodent, like a sniffer dog. I can sniff out in a man's psyche by the way he looks at me, talks to me, holds himself in front of me. I can sniff out pain and trauma. And because of my own experiences, because of what has been revealed to me through my experiences, and some very good therapy, by the way, and 12-step recovery. I'm not knocking 12-step recovery. It's essential. It saves lives, and it's free. Let's not forget the fact that therapy and psychiatrists and the trip to the Amazon are not free. So absolutely, I support 12-step as a foundation principle to help addicts recover. But to go further, to set yourself free, you have to realize one critical aspect of addiction. Addiction is not actually the problem. Addiction is a symptom of a problem. And so consequently, what you're doing to medicate your pain is just a manifestation. I'm not minimizing it, but that's what it is. What alcoholism, gambling, sex addiction, doesn't matter. What it's doing is it's helping you suppress pain. So until you figure out what the pain is, why are you likely to stop using something that makes you feel good? Well, the answer is you're not. So what ayahuasca and what now 16 or 17 years of therapy have finally helped me learn is the truth about why I became the woman-hating, fearing man that I've tragically lived most of my life as. And it has therefore empowered me with knowledge to say, I don't need to fear women. They're not going to hurt me anymore. I'm a 6'8" guy. It's hard for a woman to hurt me today. I don't need to live in fear anymore. I can find the peace I absolutely deserved that I was born into, but then had robbed from and stolen from me. So today I sit here telling you there is a solution to depression. There is a solution to addiction. You've got to get curious with compassion to reconnect with yourself. If you can do those three things, you will find the peace you deserve.